Today, we will be talking about building relationships with EL students and their families. We will look at ways to enhance our own cultural awareness and promote a deeper level of student engagement.
So, where are we headed today? We're going to look at three different objectives: how to foster cultural awareness, we're going to look at strengthening student engagement, and look at building relationships with our English learners and their families. We know that today's classroom looks contrastingly different than it did decades ago. One element of education is continually changing, and that is that diversity and the cultures being brought into our classrooms from students that were not born in the U.S. or were born here but their family norms are different than our own.
Today's classrooms are microcosms of the global situation experienced in the U.S., and teachers must face the constant variation and change that this reality imposes upon them. The EL population now comprises over 10% of public school enrollment, and this rate is growing.
Of that enrollment, 80% are ELs that are Spanish speakers. Spanish speakers in the U.S. tend to come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds than the general population. Many immigrants from Mexico and Central America are below the poverty level. Fewer than 40% of these immigrants have a high school diploma, compared to 80 and 90% of other immigrants and 87.5 of U.S. born residents with high school diplomas.
The Asian second language group is the next highest percentage and accounts for 11% of the nation's English language learners. Asian immigrants generally have both higher income and higher levels of education.
There are many differences in language learners in our classrooms today. Knowing how to look at these differences can help us plan our programs and our instruction so that English learners can be more successful in our classrooms. Let's take a closer look at the diverse characteristics of language learners.
Many of these differences are centered around the EL's first language. Some immigrant students had strong academic backgrounds before entering the United States. These students are literate in their native language, and as they become more proficient in English, they can transfer the knowledge they learned in their native country schools to the courses they are taking in the United States. Some courses, such as social studies, may need special attention, but overall, with English language and content instruction in our schools, these students will be successful.
However, on the other hand, some immigrants have little and no formal education in their native country. They are not literate in their first language and they have poorly prepared skills for school experiences. These students have significant gaps in their knowledge and are more at risk for educational failure.
Furthermore, there are English language learners who have grown up in the United States. They speak a language other than English at home, and they are fluent in this first language. They master English at school and fully demonstrate literacy in English. They move easily between languages and cultures, and they are very successful in the classroom. There's another group of students referred to as long term language learners. They do not speak English at home. They've not fully mastered English or their home language. They continue to lack proficiency in English even after 5, 6, or more years in United States schools. Usually they have oral proficiency in English, but they lack reading and writing skills in the content areas. These students are unable to pass state tests that would reclassify them as fully language proficient. These English language learners must develop three knowledge bases: not only knowledge of English, but also knowledge of content and just knowledge of how required school tasks are to be accomplished in order to demonstrate true academic literacy.
And many of these students also rely on additional services, such as special education, response to intervention, and even migrant and gifted programs. It is important to include these additional service providers in discussions and decisions. Working together as a team of stakeholders and understanding that each can add additional information in a collaborative format will enrich the EL's educational path.
ELs are impacted by many characteristics that are outside of our control. These factors include poverty level, mobility and absenteeism, exposure to serious stressors, and refugee or asylee status. Very importantly, parents' educational background. While these factors are outside of our control, they affect our learners and our classrooms. ELs have characteristics that we can see, but many that we cannot. The cues that we recognize regarding culture are only a small part of the big picture. Take a few moments to look at the cultural iceberg and determine what characteristics are visible and what characteristics are not. Every language and culture has gestures and body language that convey meaning. Just as we use language to communicate, we also communicate through nonverbal means. Importantly, meanings attached to gestures are not always universal across cultures.
In North America, speakers are expected to maintain some eye contact, and that shows willingness and attentiveness and interest in the speaker. Therefore, failure to maintain eye contact may have negative connotations. Speakers may even be viewed as inattentive or dishonest.
Sense of personal space also varies from culture to culture. Low contact cultures are generally uncomfortable when personal space is not respected.
Gestures that are readily understood in our culture may be misunderstood by other cultures.
Let's look at some examples of nonverbal miscues in communication across other cultures.
Now let's look at ways to strengthen student engagement.
We see 5 stages of language development shown on the slide. Understanding EL's level of language development can help us strengthen engagement. We can understand that trying to perform cognitive tasks while learning a new language may be exhausting, causing ELs to show physical signs of fatigue in the classroom. In contrast, advanced stage learners may demonstrate grade level proficiency and need few additional supports in the classroom. Teachers use the can do descriptors based on WIDA screener or access test scores to write model performance indicators for ELs. These model performance indicators help ensure that ELs have access to the standards with appropriate language support in order to develop reading, writing, listening, and speaking in English through the content areas.
So, how can we make language more comprehensible? You'll see the book on the screen. The SIOP model, Making Content Comprehensible, offers some suggestions. This approach is terrific and applicable for not only your ELs, but for all learners.
First of all, have clearly defined language goals for the lesson. The objectives should represent an aspect of academic language that students need to learn and master. Use supplementary materials to make the lesson clear and meaningful. Multimedia, Pictures and visuals, demonstrations, adapted text, all of these are useful for ELs. Have activities for English language learners that support content standards. EL should have the same exposure to grade level standards as everyone in the classroom. However, the supports to access the grade level standards may look different. Build background knowledge. Link past learning and new concepts. Emphasize key vocabulary. Teach general academic vocabulary as well as subject specific and technical terms.
Now let's look at two testimonials from two Hart County students who are at different levels of their language development.
When I come to Hardcore Middle School in September of 2021, many teachers were helpful to me. Teachers use Google Translate to communicate because I speak no English. They use pictures and hand signals, and they were patient. In 3 months, have learned a lot of English. I have opportunities to speak, listen, read, and write in English every day. Thank you. I have been in US school for 2 years. When I first came, I used a picture dictionary and a translator. I quickly decided that it was helpful for me to learn words in English as much as possible without translating to Spanish. Thank you, teacher, for being patient with me as I learn. Thank you for giving me pictures to illustrate concepts and sharing video clips with important information. Thank you for welcoming me with a smile. Thank you for helping me feel successful. My favorite subject is math. I would like to go to college. I'm interested in several careers. Wherever I go, I will take along the things you told me. Thank you.
In conclusion, let's take a look at how to effectively build relationships with our students and their families.
First of all, communicate using parents' preferred home language. ESOL teachers update and maintain a spreadsheet of preferred home language for each school.
ESOL teachers hold language conferences with parents using a translator a minimum of 3 times a year. However, if you feel that you need additional conferences with EL parents, please reach out to your ESOL teacher in your building. One big challenge that schools and teachers face is providing outreach and communication in the parent's preferred home language. Communication tools can facilitate parent teacher communication with the second language families.
School status provides an electronic translator when needed. It's important to remember that digital translators are not always 100% accurate. Best practice is to keep statements short, using precise language that limits the use of idioms and confusing subject verb agreement.
Many parents prefer a text to a phone call, so a text, if it would meet the purpose, by all means use it. Use school status as a tool to communicate with families in their preferred home language.
We hope that this presentation has given you ideas for enhancing cultural awareness and building relationships with EL students. Thank you.